Alright, so now let's write a simple Hello World program using Node.js. So the first thing we want to do is make a new directory. Let's call it Hello World. Now let's just start writing our first Node.js application. So I'm just going to use Vim to write this, but you can actually use any text editor that you're comfortable with. So let's open a new file, call it app.js. And our first application will be really simple. We'll just log to the console, hello world. So now the way we run this is we say node and give it the name of our application, and it prints out hello world. Okay, so this is looking good. It's our first application, but now let's make an actual web server with this. So in order to make this into a web server, let's delete this line, and now let's say var http equals require http. So HTTP is actually built into Node.js. It's a library, and what we're doing up here is we're saying we need to use this library, require HTTP, and store a reference to this library in the variable HTTP. So if we go down here, now we can say var server equals http dot create server and pass it a function for what to do when the server receives a request. And we get a response object as well. So when our server receives a request, the request will be in the first argument, and the object for handling the response will be in the second argument. So what we can do is when we get any request, we say response.writeHead status 200 content. Okay, so first we set this to set some metadata about our response. Then after we've done that, we actually send the response by calling response.end and send hello world. What this does is it specifies what to do when our server receives a request. But the one part missing here is telling our server to listen for incoming connections. So now let's listen on port 8000 and let's log to the console a friendly message telling the user that the server has successfully started. So now we'll actually run this by calling node app.js. You can see our server is running on localhost 8000. So what we can do now is we can go to our browser and we type localhost 8000 and we get hello world. So that is the first example of using Node.js to write a simple server. Notice we use the HTTP library, but actually Node.js allows you to interact with the client on a number of different levels. And if you wanted to, you could actually just open a raw TCP connection and interact that way. For this course, we'll actually be using a framework called Express. So that's one level above HTTP and actually handles a lot of the routing and details of HTTP for us. Alright, so those are the basics of setting up a simple server running on Node.js.